Hello, Nikki Parkin here, one of the learning designers at Flinders University. You may have heard me talking about a pattern approach, and this quick video is to explain what I mean by that. So a pattern approach is a process for shared and sustained course and topic development, I suppose, in its simplest form. And it's about how we can come together and think about how our flow sites are set up, especially at that course level. So to begin with, I guess I mean a pattern in two forms, first as an artifact and also as a process. And when I say approach, it's because it's quite a loose process, but the artifact and the process themselves are purposeful, configurable, applied and reusable, and they depend on three interrelated questions: what is working well, what is important, and what should be shared. We can think about the pattern as occurring, well, there's a number of different kinds of approaches to a pattern. So in the first and the most simplest, I suppose, is just a course site. So where there might be a recurrence of particular materials, often across various topics. We can think about how they could actually live in the same site, in a course site, and topics can then just link to those materials in that course site. So that's one way of thinking about a pattern. The other way is that topics within a course could have a similar look and feel and could be configured, styled and structured in a consistent way so that the student as a user comes into that kind of topic environment and interacts with that topic environment reasonably consistently across their award. And then there's this layer of educational pattern, which is kind of probably the most interesting. And we can think about an educational pattern quite simply in terms of, you've probably heard of flipped classroom. That's an educational pattern where a student might do independent exploration of new materials and then come back together as in a workshop or as a whole cohort to explore those materials, ask questions, apply or whatever. So that's kind of a little pattern, if you like, that might be repeated as well throughout the topic. And there are many, many others. There are patterns of self and peer assessment. There are patterns of working in a lab and then sharing results. There are patterns of critically exploring new literature. And I'm sure that you're already using patterns. You may not necessarily be thinking of them that way, that's all. So it's interesting as a group to actually call out those patterns and to start to begin to share them with each other, because something that you might be doing particularly well in your topic could be picked up and used in another topic, or certainly adapted in another topic, so that you're not, again, starting from scratch, but you're using good ideas that have been proved in practice by your colleagues as starting places. And then the other sense that we can talk about a pattern is that you may have a sort of a repeating sequence of activities that happen, every week or every module in your topic. So there are multiple layers, if you like, of pattern. And one of the fun things that you can do is to configure an educational pattern by breaking it down into its various components, which often based on verbs, I suppose. Here I've just brainstormed a few: activate your thinking, explore new resources, share your progress, check your understanding, pause for thought. They're all parts, if you like, of an educational activity, or they may be multiple educational activities that can then be played with and configured to create new patterns. So the up and down green arrow is there to remind us that actually those different learning approaches, those little activities, can occur in different orders and be suggest quite exciting new patterns. So it's a way, if you like, of breaking out of old patterns. And we could think about it that way. So for instance, instead of always exploring new resources and then activating your thinking and then applying your thinking, what would happen if we checked our understanding first, then had a go, and then looked at new resources to check how that actually stacks up against, for instance, what's in the literature. So there are multiple ways that you can kind of play with, if you like, the sequence or flow of activity in your topic, and this is what then creates new patterns. So that's quite an experimental process, but you'll have a sense of whether that's going to work or not, but it certainly breaks it up and makes it fun. If things do work, they can be duplicated then across your topic, or you can mix it up. So instead of always starting with new resources, perhaps why don't we start with new resources in the beginning, and that's, you know, kind of nice solid ground, and then as we move in more maturity towards the end of the topic, we could actually start by checking back and starting to review resources or check prior understandings or previous learnings and then build on them. So begin to build or enrich your pattern as well. And if you've got things that are working particularly well, why not name and share them through the activity bank, and then others can start to use them as well. So a process for this might consist of several parts. What does it actually mean if we're involved in a pattern approach? For a start, there is a process where the whole course team, whole course teaching team, or certainly the topic and course coordinators might come together to think about what a shared topic structure might look like for the student as a user going through topics in a course. What might be common, what might their experience be like? So should we organise things in a particular way so that when a student lands in a new topic, it's configured reasonably consistently? And what should it look like? You know, how can it represent the discipline or the industry so that it feels like a proper home for that area? So that's work that can kind of happen alongside actually peering into existing topics. So we don't often see each other's topics and what they look like, and this is a good opportunity to come together and show each other what your topics look like and talk about what's already working. So not starting from scratch, or starting from what has been proved in practice and beginning to share some ideas that might go into a beginning activity bank, and also at the same time identifying what is common, what seems to be common across all of our topics that could indeed be lifted out and put into the course site. So that work is kind of happening at the same time. And then we can have a conversation about the course site and whether it really is just a place, a repository for materials, or is it a place for interactivity as well? Do we want a space for students across the course to do something, or can we use it for communications? And can we use it to actually link into industry and discipline so that it becomes, if you like, a home for the whole course? And how will it be managed? You know, who is going to take care of it, and how will it be updated? The course sites, the topic sites themselves, once you've agreed on a particular look and feel and kind of set up that might be common across your topics, that can be lifted and actually then gently placed into your existing topic without needing to start again. Just sort of applies a little bit of structure and styling right over the top, and then you can move your things around inside of that so that they actually then line up, if you like, with some of the other topics. And it's a way of gently sort of lining up the topics. So that's what I mean by applying the common elements. And then there's the fun part of configuring your educational strategies and activity patterns. So some of these you already have, some of them may be new. You've picked up ideas from your colleagues and we can bring them in and put them in and think about if there is anything new, what is it that you need to feel comfortable teaching with that and how will you evaluate it. And then really the benefits that have been gained by coming together and sharing what works and thinking about what matters and what is common can be then sustained by repeating that process every 6 months of just coming back together, looking at your sites, talking about what has worked, what needs to change, tweaking any of those common elements that might be in the sort of basic pattern, and at the same time looking to see whether there are any updates that need to happen in the course site. So that's kind of what I mean by a pattern approach. I hope that makes sense, and I'm happy to come and talk to you about it. Thank you.